All right, so this is 5-2, and this is the warm-up. You can do 3 of them. I'm going to do number 2 with you, okay? So the first thing we do when we're looking for the slope is we label the points, x1, y1, x2, y2. Remember that your equation, you subtract your y's on top and your x's on the bottom. So we are going to do y2 minus y1 on top, which is 2 minus 7. And on the bottom, we're doing x2 minus x1, which is 1 minus 1. 2 minus 7 is negative 5. 1 minus 1 is 0. If there's a 0 involved, that is when you are not leaving it as a fraction. So you have to ask yourself, it's either 0 or undefined, okay? The fact that the 0 is on the bottom, if you would try to divide by 0, you cannot do that, okay? So that is a slope that is undefined. The slope is on the bottom, it's undefined. If you're still struggling with that, you can always just put it in your calculator. If your calculator tells you 0, then the slope is 0. If your calculator tells you error, then it's undefined. What kind of lines have an undefined slope? Vertical lines. Okay, so that's a vertical line. Remember that the equations of vertical lines only have x's. So this would be x equals, and then it's whatever matched. So the x's were both 1, so the equation of that line would be x equals 1. Okay, just things to keep in mind. But you definitely need to know that it is undefined because it is a vertical line. Okay? You could do the other 3. We are going to do a couple different things today. The first thing we're going to do is we are going to be given an ordered pair, half of another ordered pair, and the slope. So instead of us finding the slope given 2 complete points, we're going to be finding a missing part of a point because we know what the slope is. Okay, so same formula, but just different way to use it because we're given different information. So it all depends on what information you're given and what you need to do. Okay, so if we're given the slope of a line, so we have the answer per se. We're given 1 point and a single coordinate of the other point, so you know 1 number in your other ordered pair. We're going to solve using cross products. So cross products is cross multiplication, okay? And just know that the letter M always talks about slope. I think it's like French. It comes from like a French word for mountain or something like that. So there's a reason for it, but M is always slope. All right. So this is what you're going to do. You're going to set up equal ratios or proportions. So you're going to have 2 fractions set equal to each other. You're going to use the 2 points and your slope to set those up. Okay? You're going to cross multiply to get rid of your fractions, and then you're going to solve for your variable like you always do. Okay? So we are still using our formula y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. You use that formula to find your slope, or m. So we're going to plug in the things we know into this general formula that we've been using for days already. So you have ordered pairs, okay? So it says find the value of r so that the line through these points has that slope. Whenever you have ordered pairs, label them x1, y1, x2, y2, okay? And has a slope of 3/2. Well, slope is m. Okay, so that's your m. So we went through the question and we labeled everything we knew, and now we can plug them into that formula. So I'm doing y2 minus y1. So y2 is negative 3 minus y1, which is 6. And we put it over x2 minus x1. x2 is 10 minus x1, which is r. So that's the exact same slope formula we have been using. The only difference is that one of the numbers is a letter instead, okay? We use this formula to find slope. Well, they told us what our slope was, so I don't need to find it. I know what it is. So I set this equal to, my slope is -3/2, so I set it equal to -3/2. So instead of looking for the answer, I know the answer this time. Okay? So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 equals your slope as a fraction. Then we're going to simplify this and go from there. So we know we can do -3 minus 6. -3 minus 6 is -9. I cannot do 10 minus r because one has a variable and one doesn't, so I have to leave it 10 minus r. I set it equal to -3/2 because that's the answer. I have simplified each fraction as much as I possibly can, so all I have left to do, I can cross multiply to get rid of my fractions. So -9 times 2 is -18. When you cross multiply, you set your cross products equal to each other, so it equals -3 times 10 minus r in parentheses. If this comes from the same part of the fraction, it has to stay grouped together. From here, it is a normal equation that you would solve. So you see parentheses, so you know you need to distribute. So this side's still -18 equals -3 times 10 is -30. -3 times a negative r is a positive 3r. Okay? We're solving for r, so we're going to add this 30 over. Okay? So -18 plus 30 is a positive 12. And that's a positive 3r on the other side. And then the last step to solve for r is to divide both sides by 3. So r is 4. All we did was find the missing part of that ordered pair. So if that x1 value was 4, then those 2 points would have a slope of -3/2. Okay, that's the goal. So we found r. So we're done. All right, let's do another one. Again, we have y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, and that gives us our slope. So those are the pieces we need to know. Plug in what we know. They flat out just said m equals 7/2 this time. And then we still have ordered pairs, x1, y1, x2, y2, and we are going to plug them in. So y2 minus y1, that is s minus -5 over x2 minus x1, which is 4 minus 2. We do that formula to find the slope, but this time they told us what the slope is, 7/2. So I just write it and set it equal. I have to simplify each part of these fractions first before I'm going to cross multiply. So right here you see 2 signs in a row. We know we don't want to leave that. 2 negatives give us a positive, so that's s plus 5 over. On the bottom I just have normal numbers. 4 minus 2 is 2. And it's still set equal to 7/2. Okay? Now that you have those filled in, you're going to cross multiply. So 2 times parentheses s plus 5, because the s plus 5 was together in the fraction, so it stays together when you cross multiply. Set it equal to your other cross product. 7 times 2 is 14, and then it's just normal solving from here. So 2 times s is 2s, plus 2 times 5 is 10, equals 14. Subtract this 10 over. So 2s equals 4, and then finally you are going to divide by 2. So S is 2. So that's the half of the missing point that you had. And that's it. All right, the other thing we're going to do is we're going to use slope to talk about rate of change within graphs. Okay, so it's telling you, rate of change tells you on average how much it's changing over time. Okay, so how much something is changing over time from a linear or from a line graph. So this is how much money people used to spend at food and drink at restaurants between these specific years. Okay, it is not a perfect line. However, we can still estimate what the general rate of change was between years by picking the points and finding the slope. So this says find the rate of change from 1980 to 1990. So I need the ordered pairs at those points. So I need the ordered pair at 1980 and I need the ordered pair at 1990. Okay? So here, my X value is the year, 1980. My Y value is where we're at on the Y-axis, which looks to be about 125. Okay? 1990 is my other point I'm supposed to use, so that makes 1990 my X value. And let's call this, it's not quite to the 250. Let's call that 240. Okay, it's an estimate. Not sure unless we're handed the actual value. I'm not 100% sure, but we'll call it 240. Okay, so those are my two ordered pairs. So I'm going to copy those down here, and I'm going to use these in my rate of change. It asks for rate of change. Rate of change is the same thing as asking for slope. So that's what I'm looking for, is the slope between these 2 points now. X1, Y1, X2, Y2. I'm going to subtract the Y's on top and the X's on the bottom. So my Y2 is 240 and my Y1 is 125. So if I do 240 minus 125 over X2 minus X1 is 1990 minus 1980. Okay, so on the top, 240 minus 125 is 115. And on the bottom, I have a change of 10. Okay, when I'm trying to find this rate of change, let's talk about this really quickly. These weren't just arbitrary points, okay? These points came from a graph that actually represented real things. So we have to put this into perspective as to what this is actually talking about, okay? My Y values, or the top of my fraction, came from my Y-axis, which is money, okay, dollars. So $115, and my bottom came from my X's, which are years, in 10 years, okay? So, and you have to think about it being positive or negative. So this is a positive slope. We could tell that by looking at this. It's going up. We knew that, okay? It's going up. So it increased $115 in 10 years. So how much people spend on average increased $115 in 10 years, okay? The question, if I want to find the annual rate of change, okay, annual is per year. I found it over 10 years. If I want it for 1 year, okay, annual means 1 year. I would divide 115 by 10 to figure out what it was per year. So we know it increased $115 over 10 years. I want to know on average how much it increased in 1 year for those over that time span, okay? So if I divide it out, that gives me $11.50. So it increased $11.50 per year. That's not perfect because it wasn't a perfect line. Okay, so there wasn't a completely straight line from 1980 to 1990. But it gives me an idea. If I want to predict what's happening, I knew it was going up about $11.50 a year every year for 10 years. So you have to, when you're using these, understand the context and what's happening. So the y-axis was money, so whatever you got in your change in y's was how much it changed money. Your x-axis was years, so your change in x's was years. So $115 in 10 years, and it was positive, so it increased that much. And then if I want to know on average how much it changed per year in that time span, I divided it out. 115 divided by 10, and I got $11.50 a year. So on average, it was changing and increasing $11.50 per year over those 10 years. Okay? You're going to do it yourself from 1990 to 2000. So you can go ahead and get those 2 points. We already have the 1990, and then you're going to do the 2000 point, and then you're going to find the rate of change between those 2 years. Okay? When you're done, turn it in, and then you can do your 5-2 worksheet.